I said it, I say it again. Black history is not just about 1 month. Because Black history is American history. And it's all year round. Because this country was built through our blood, sweat, and tears and on our backs. Yes. Along with other people. So at this time, we're going to continue our Black history celebration. And we're going to have Sister Tabitha. She's going to introduce for us who's going to be our historian this evening. Amen? Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. It's really a full house, and it's a great honor to have with us historian James E. Johnson. I actually went to a talk in my city, Woodbury, New Jersey, and it was advertised. I saw it on the internet through the library, the public library, and when I saw his talk, it was called Black Woodbury and the Civil War. I was really, really impressed, and I was really excited. So I mentioned it to Reverend Pam about this talk, and she said, "You know, do you think you can get him to come here to give the talk?" I thought he was going to talk about Woodbury again, and I reached out, and it was really amazing because historian Johnson, Dr. Johnson, is actually from North Philadelphia. He actually grew up at 30th and Lehigh. And he said to me when I called him up, he said, "Well, I'll let you tell the story," but he said, "I'm not sure, but I think my Boy Scout troops were meeting at exactly that church," and I'll let him tell the rest. But I'll just tell you guys that that you're in to learn a lot today about our history during the era of the Civil War. And without further ado, Dr. Johnson.
Amen.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Get comfortable here. It's a pleasure to be here. My old stomping grounds, and as I was telling Tabitha, it's coming in the doors here. I'll never forget those red doors. This is the church that I was a Boy Scout in. I think it was Troop 541, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and we used to train with the old M1 rifles at that time. They were supposed to be the state-of-the-art thing for soldiers back in at least that era. But you know, shopping at the big store down the street and all that stuff. You know, and I worked at 29th and Lehigh, Robinson's truck store for so long. And learning how to make milkshakes and all that. Anyway, so, you know, it's just great to be back here to talk about some of the history that involves, you know, Philadelphia and the Civil War. This is certainly a point at which in history, of course, that the whole character of the nation changes. It goes from the largest slave republic in the world to another kind of existence, certainly, but slavery is no longer the law of the land. And we know though it's another 100 years of terror and other kinds of obstacles that we faced and are still unfinished struggle.
Yes.
Along the way, with this Civil War that takes place between 1861 and 1865, there is this structure of this place called Camp William Penn, the largest camp in the North for African-American soldiers, for the training of African-American soldiers, and 11 regiments. There's 1,000 men to a regiment. 11 regiments were trained at Camp William Penn. And so I want to talk today about some of the things that involve Camp William Penn and Black Philadelphians. And there is no particular way to tell this story. This is one presentation of it that I want to share. I hope it's enlightening, and we can follow this up with some vigorous question and answer. I look forward to that. Okay. I want to let's see how this thing's going to work. Uh-oh.
You push that other button? Okay,
There you go.
good.
Okay. Excuse me. What did I do? Okay. I want to dedicate tonight's program to Reverend Jeremiah Asher. Reverend Asher was pastor for 16 years at Shiloh Baptist Church in South Philadelphia before he became the chaplain in the 6th Regiment of United States Colored Troops. And by the way, the 11 regiments that trained at that camp, you might not remember them in this order, but, you know, talk about it if you would. It was the 3rd Regiment, all infantry regiments. The 3rd, the 6th, the 8th, the 22nd, 24th, 25th, 32nd, 41st, 43rd, 45th, and the 127th. That should be 11 regiments. Each one of them, of course, named with a number. Where are the other numbers? The 1st, 2nd, 4th, and all those that other fits in there. Regiments are organized in other areas, they were so they fit in other times in other locations. Reverend Asher was not only did he perform his duties as a chaplain for the 6th Regiment, he was also a great recruiter. The 6th Regiment did a lot of their service in North Carolina. He went down there, and among many of the free people, he organized a church for them. She opened up a branch of Shiloh Baptist Church down there, and a place called Slab Town, which was a place where free people lived at. And he recruited largely for the Union Army. In fact, he worked so hard, he actually worked himself into bad health. And this is when he was initially being recommended to be chaplain. Several of the officers in the 6th Regiment wrote this statement attesting to his character. And so he was recommended and got his chaplainship. However, July 21st, Captain, commanding officer of the 6th Regiment had to write this about Reverend Asher. And finally, where it says that he might not be living, I have that emphasis is mine, and to prevent the loss of his life, they recommended that he actually change his location and get some rest. However, 6 days later he died on July 27th from typhoid. And when they wrote about him after he died, they said one of the problems was that he had overexerted himself. So he was sent back home permanently, not to be with us anymore in this world. So I want to dedicate the program tonight to Reverend Asher. Why is it that the Camp William Penn, not only just Camp William Penn, why did black soldiers get recruited anyway? They got recruited, and largely we don't hear this story. We don't hear this story in the schools. It's really not in the books. But they were recruited because 2 years deep into the war, no, a year and a half deep into the war, the North was losing. The South was bringing some noise. I want to show you 1862, and the war starts April 1861. Let's look at the first half of 1862 and look at the death rates for these white troops, and you can see. Now remember, there's only 30 million people living in the United States at this time.
Oh, wow.
All right? And you can see this was unprecedented in the Western world. To have these kinds of deaths coupled with the mortally wounded who died later. And this is just the first half of 1862, and these are white soldiers dying. Now, their enlistments began to end, and they weren't trying to re-enlist in large numbers. They were trying to go home. They had what they called seen the white elephant, and it wasn't pretty. Let's see. Now, that's the first half of 1862. Just glance at that a moment, just digest that a moment. The shock, that would be a shock today. All right? Second half. All right, second half.
Wow.
NASA, right?
Wow.
All right, these are the kind of deaths that people are being faced with, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's really something else. It's really something else. You see those numbers. Well, these are the reasons that the talk began to say, wait a minute, hold it. Why are we dying for these black people? I mean, if that's, it seems that must be a part of it. Lincoln was saying, look, it's not about them. We're trying to hold a union together. It's not about black people. And this is a white man's war. And everybody's saying that. However, the numbers and the people's reaction to these were much different, right? Those people dying, their families wasn't trying to hear that, right? And the soldiers themselves wasn't trying to re-enlist. So the conversation began, we need some help. And all these African Americans who from the day one of the war have been running away, going to the Union lines without being asked. They're cooking, they're nursing, they're teamsters, they're building fortifications, they're spies, they're river pilots, they're all of these kinds of auxiliary kinds of forces for the Union Army. And they're making it plain of how this war has to be won. Frederick Douglass is saying it. You know, stop fighting with your arm tied behind your back. You know, so all of these things are pushing this. So by August 1862, we get the first breach in South Carolina when the 1st South Carolina Regiment of Colored Volunteers is formed. That's August 1862. Between August and the end of that year, 1862, we get like the first 5 organizations of colored troops organized. That was South Carolina, then over in New Orleans, and then Kansas, and then fourthly, we're back here in the East, and we get in late 1862 the formation of the 54th Regiment that we see in Georgia. Right? I said 5, but I should have said 4 areas. So that's South Carolina, New Orleans, Kansas City, and Reedsville, Massachusetts, where the 54th was organized. Why would I mention the 54th? The 54th Regiment, to fill that, they had to circulate over the entire Northeast because there weren't that many black people to fill the regiment of military age in Boston, up there around Reedsville. They came into Philadelphia, and they had to do it in a quiet kind of way because many people were still resistant to black people being in the military, and so they quietly organized a lot of people here in Philly, and almost the entire Company B. Companies are letters by letters in the Army, and Company B, almost the entire Company B came right out of Philadelphia. And you can look in a book, it's called The Brave Black Regiment by one of the captains. His name was Emilio. He lists all their names and where they were organized, and it's really interesting to see how many people actually came out of Philadelphia that was in the 54th Massachusetts. Then we get to (1863). Of course, Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect January 1st, 1863. We know it didn't free many people, but the last thing it had, I think it's like 12 parts to the Emancipation Proclamation. Part 12 says, The president has the power at his discretion to bring in anyone he sees fit to perform in the military. It meant that's the strongest part of the Emancipation Proclamation, that last part, because it invites the president, well, he's inviting himself to enlist these people, whomever he sees fit in the military. And by June, there's talk of organizing this organization called United States Colored Troops. Okay? But there's something for us in Philadelphia that kind of accelerates this thing, and that is the Battle of Gettysburg. Okay, what do black people have to do with that? Nothing that we've ever seen in the books. Nothing that we've seen in the movies, any of the movies, Killer Angels, all of them. I mean, if you see it, I think an African American is in there, he has no lines and he's just looking scared at some point. But, you know how that goes. So, the story of the Gettysburg campaign operates for Philadelphians in particular when 75,000 Confederate soldiers headed by Robert E. Lee invade Pennsylvania, south central Pennsylvania. They come up on the other side of the Allegheny.